It is starting to get really cold here already. G'day. I'm really sorry. I forgot. We are 280 days into vlogging, and I forgot one. So here I am, being late. My bad. This is an important message, and it's one I've been looking forward to talking about actually for a little while. I was learning a lot over the Easter weekend about sort of what Jesus went through and why he had to go through it. And it's a question that I remember as a kid I used to ask, and I understand it, but it is, it's a question that does come up a lot, and that is, if God has the power to forgive sins, why doesn't he just forgive sins? Why did Jesus have to go through what he went through? And why did, very specifically, why did he have to go through that? Because it was a lot. It was awful. There's a lot of debate as to whether portraying Jesus and portraying what Jesus went through in media is a good thing or a bad thing. I think, look, to help people to grasp what he really went through, yeah, it's a great thing. The amount of sort of films that I've seen or footage, videos, whatever, that I've seen that really just put it into perspective. What Jesus went through for us. Man, you think about this, all started because God said, don't touch that tree. That's it. If that was the only sin, the punishment for sin, I'm repeating myself here, but the punishment for sin is death. If that was the only sin, if eating the fruit was the only sin, that would be the same punishment, and that would be the same payment for that punishment. What Jesus went through, let me explain why. So we're going to read through Exodus 12. I'm pretty sure it's Exodus 12. I really hope it's Exodus 12. It is. All right. I just want to find the part that I was looking for. Whoopsie daisy. Give me 2 seconds. I'll probably end up reading the whole thing knowing me. All right. Yeah, I will. Let's go. So the Lord said to Moses and Aaron in Egypt, so they haven't left yet, this month is to be for you the first month of your year. Tell the whole community of Israel that on the 10th day of this month, each man is to take a lamb for his family, one for each household. If any household is too small for a whole lamb, they must share one with their nearest neighbor, having taken into account the number of people there are. You are to determine the amount of lamb needed in accordance with what each person will eat. The animals you choose must be year-old males without defect, and you must take them from the sheep or the goats. Take care of them until the 14th day of the month, when all the members of the community of Israel must slaughter them at twilight. Then they are to take some of the blood and put it on the sides and the tops of the door frames of the house where they eat the lambs. That same night they are to eat the meat roasted over the fire, along with bitter herbs and bread made without yeast. Do not eat the meat raw or boiled in water, but roast it over a fire with the head, legs, and internal organs. Do not leave any of it until morning. If some of it is left till morning, you must burn it. This is how you are to eat, with your cloak tucked into your belt, your sandals on your feet, and your staff in your hand. Eat it in haste. It is the Lord's Passover. So this is the instruction, right? We hear the term Passover. That's just chapter 12, verses 1 to 11. There's a lot more. Actually, I'm going to keep going because this next bit is important. Why? What are we talking about lambs for? Why are we talking about lambs? What's going on in Egypt? Well, TLDR, the Israelites were, after the time of Joseph, where there was a famine, and Joseph was looking after Pharaoh's, looking after Egypt. He was second in command in Egypt, so to speak. He brought his brothers in and his family, and they survived the famine. Unfortunately, Pharaoh changed, and Joseph passed on, and the Israelites grew and were treated as slaves from a family, from Joseph's family through to now. They had become slaves. Very unfortunate. And as part of their enslavement, they were not allowed to worship God, and God didn't like that, and that's fair enough, in my opinion. So continuing now, verse 12. On that same night I will pass through Egypt, and I will strike down every firstborn of both people and animals, and I will bring judgment on all the gods, lowercase, of Egypt. I am the Lord. The blood will be a sign for you on the houses where you live, and when I see the blood, I will pass over you. No destructive plague will touch you when I strike Egypt. This is a day you are to commemorate for the generations to come. You should celebrate it as a festival to the Lord, a lasting ordinance. And he continues on. But I want to... This is the part that hits for me, right? So again, Joseph's family was saved from famine in Egypt. The Egyptians then turned essentially on the Israelites as they grew in number and enslaved them and used them to build Egypt up and all this. And didn't allow them to worship their God, who is the one true God, by the way, just in case you weren't aware. From there were a number of plagues, and Pharaoh each time said, if you take these plagues away, I'll let them go. And so Moses, through the power of God, sort of turned off the plagues, so to speak. And then Pharaoh hardened his heart and said, actually, no. So this was the final plague. The final plague. God said, on that same night, I will pass through Egypt and strike down every firstborn of both people and animals, and I will bring judgment on all the gods of Egypt. So, we essentially have... there's another point. You get the point. I don't want to sort of divert. I'm 6 minutes in. I'm really bad at sticking to what I want to talk about. But that's how the Israelites survived, so to speak, the angel of death. Was God came through and did as he said. He goes, I'm going to come here and I'm going to kill every firstborn in this nation, human or other. The only firstborns that I will not kill, the only households that I will leave alone, are those that are covered by the blood of the Lamb. Now, that terminology, you can see where this is going. The way Jesus was killed was heinous, absolutely horrendous. So he died on a cross. He died with his hands and feet nailed to timber. But how he got there was he carried this cross, very, very heavy cross. He at one point fell over, and the cross would have winded him quite significantly. But we know for a fact as well that he was not, there was not a bone broken, because there was another prophecy around that as well. When he died, or typically when you died on a cross, if you weren't dying fast enough to help you die quicker, the Romans were very thoughtful, and they would shatter your knees so that you could no longer lift yourself up with your knees to take air, and you would run out of breath and die. Horrible, horrible, horrible way to go. Where was I going with this? So I think I'm looping in circles. There's a couple of things I wanted to talk about. Number one, the punishment for sin is death. This is what we are told. We know that our God is a perfect God, is a just God. Sin cannot go unpunished. This is the God that we serve. Sin cannot go unpunished. Sin must be paid. There is a debt. There is always a debt. So that is why Jesus had to die. Somebody had to die. Those of us who know and believe and choose to submit to Jesus understand how lucky we are. There is not a single thing we could have ever done to have paid that debt except died. It's that simple. Our punishment is death. Jesus took that punishment on himself. He was that one perfect lamb. He was the unblemished, without defect lamb. He was perfect. There was not a sin on him. There is elsewhere, I think it's in Leviticus, they talk about how basically there is a sin offering. There's a sin offering where you are to essentially confess or speak your sin into another animal and kill them in your place. So they would bear your sin, the animal, and they would die in place of you for your sin, essentially. Now, we as Christians don't sacrifice animals anymore because the one perfect, unblemished lamb, Jesus Christ, also died in our place and took on our sin in our place. That's crazy. It's mind-blowing that we do not deserve that. I do not deserve what Jesus did for me. But the next part, again, and this is where I love in Exodus, the second book in the Bible, the second book in the Old Testament. I want you to think, when you hear this, I want you to think about how this could potentially apply to Jesus. So on that same night, I will pass through Egypt, and I will strike down every firstborn of both people and animals, and I'll bring judgment on all the gods of Egypt. I am the Lord. The blood will be a sign for you on the houses where you are, and when I see the blood, I will pass over you. No destructive plague will touch you when I strike Egypt. So when God traveled through Egypt and struck down the firstborn of every household, and that was a punishment. Because again, God's people were not allowed to worship. Just like how sin has come in and disallowed us from living the way that God had intended for us. We sinned, and therefore we cannot live the life that God intended, which was to be created, to look after the garden, and to walk in the garden with God. That's how we were created. That's what we were created for. And our God cannot be in the presence of sin because he is a holy and perfect God. So as a result, God needs to strike down those who sin. Our sin must be punished. However, the blood will be a sign for us on the houses where we are. God says, when I see the blood, I will pass over you. No destructive plague will touch you when I strike Egypt. The very, very same thing will happen on the day of judgment. There's not a single thing that, again, because our God is holy and just, and everything must be paid for in accordance for what is owed, which again, sin, death, said that a million times. The only way that we can avoid paying that ourselves is if Jesus Christ himself, or if someone else, a perfect, unblemished person, i.e. Jesus, had taken up that punishment for us. In other words, the blood will be a sign. The blood will be a sign. No destructive plague will touch you when I strike Egypt. This is how we get to survive God's judgment, so to speak. Because there must be blood. And we are extremely blessed, and we must be extremely grateful to remember that their blood that was spilled was not our own. And just what Jesus went through, again, horrific. It is absolutely horrific. Absolutely horrific. But we don't have to go. We don't have to be separated from God. We don't have to endure a death and an eternal separation from God as a result. And that makes me extremely grateful. Yeah, beautiful old hymn. You know, it was my sin that held him there. Is it a hymn? No, it's How Deep the Father's Love for Us. I don't know if that's a hymn or not. It's a great song, by the way. It was my sin that held him there until it was accomplished. Anyway, a lot to reflect on. I'm going to go. God bless you. Read in the book of Exodus, especially sort of talking about the Passover, talking about in the early, the Torah in the first 5 books of the Bible. It's interesting how much of it you can sort of look at and realize this was like God is sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? There's also, hang on, there's one more. Trust me, it's worth it. Trust me, it's worth it. This is going to be a good one, I promise. Promise you. Oops. You ready? We're going back to Genesis 22. This is when Abraham gets tested by God. Sometime later, God tested Abraham. He said to him, "Abraham." "Here I am," he replied. Then God said, "Take your son, your only son whom you love, Isaac, and go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on a mountain I will show you." Yikes. Early the next morning, Abraham got up and loaded his donkey. He took with him 2 of his servants and his son Isaac. When he had cut enough wood for the burnt offering, he set out for the place God had told him about. On the 3rd day, Abraham looked up and saw the place in the distance. Oh, dude. I can't imagine being here. Like God, like I look at Charlie. I was looking at him the other day. We were on the driveway. I can picture. I remember where we were. I was looking at him the other day and thinking, wow, I love that kid so much. And then I was like, God asked Abraham to sacrifice the child that he loved, the son that he loved so much. It just hit me. He said to his servants, "Stay here with the donkey while I and the boy go over there. We will worship and then we will come back to you." I find it interesting at this point. He says, "We will worship and we will come back to you," which is interesting. It's as if sort of Abraham knew. But anyway, either way, Abraham trusted God. So Abraham took the wood for the burnt offering and placed it on his son Isaac, and he himself carried the fire and the knife. Dude. So Abraham took the wood for the burnt offering and placed it on his son Isaac, and he himself carried the knife and the fire. Wow. I'll come back to that in a minute. As the two of them went on together, Isaac spoke up and said to his father Abraham, "Father." "Yes, my son," Abraham replied. "The fire and the wood are here," Isaac said. "But where is the lamb for the burnt offering?" Where is the lamb? The best possible answer. And think outside this story with this response. You ready? Abraham said, "God himself will provide the lamb for the burnt offering, my son." And the two of them went on together. God himself will provide the lamb for the burnt offering. When they reached the place God had told him about, Abraham built an altar there and arranged the wood on it. He bound his son Isaac and laid him on the altar on the top of the wood. Then he reached out his hand and took the knife to slay his son. But the angel of the Lord called out to him from heaven, "Abraham, Abraham," he said. "Here I am," he replied. "Do not lay a hand on the boy. Do not do anything to him. Now I know that you fear God, because you have not withheld from me your son, your only son." Abraham looked up, and there in a thicket he saw a ram caught by its horns. He went over and took the ram and sacrificed it as a burnt offering instead of his son. So Abraham called the place, "The Lord will provide," and to this day it is said, "On the mountain of the Lord it will be provided." Wow. So here we picture, and again, it really hits me when he says, Abraham took the wood and placed it on his son. Remember what I was saying about when Jesus went to the cross? Jesus was unblemished. Jesus had no broken bones, despite the fact that this extremely heavy cross fell on him. He fell over at one point. The crossbar that he was carrying would have fallen on him, because he was carrying the wood too. Jesus was also carrying the wood. Jesus also climbed up the mountain. God who sits outside of time. So God created time. This is the way I understand it anyway. We know our God, there's no constraints or restraints that control our God, right? Time, space, doesn't matter. God created it. He is in control of it. It bends to his will. He doesn't bend to its will, right? So if God sits outside of time, this is how I visualize it. God's got the universe. Everything that ever happened and will happen in a bubble, in his hand. That's his creation. That's what he's made. That's everything that ever will exist, has existed, could have existed, will exist, all in one spot. So at the same time that God was seeing this play out, he was also watching Jesus die. At the same time. Oh, dude. Intense. God himself will provide the lamb for the offering. And it's true. For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, so that those who believed in him would not perish, but have eternal life. God did provide the lamb. That lamb was Jesus. Interestingly, God himself will provide the lamb, my son, he said. But then it was a ram, because the lamb was coming later. All right, I'm going to go. I love these stories. I love these stories, because there's just so much. You read the first 5 books, you read the Torah, you read the early Old Testament, and it mirrors what happens later. The Bible, the entire Bible, points to Jesus and what Jesus did and who Jesus was and why he came and why it all mattered and why it had to go that way exactly. So good. All right, I'm going to go. Goodbye.